Would you?
You know, one of the things that is happening, and I think you see it all the time, Howard, you've seen it, that Cuba is ready to fall. You know?
Yes.
Cuba looks like it's ready to fall. I don't know if they're going to hold out. But Cuba now has no income. They got all of their income from Venezuela, from the Venezuelan oil. They're not getting any of it. And Cuba literally is ready to fall. And you have a lot of...
Meanwhile,
¡Abajo el imperialismo! ¡Abajo el imperialismo! ¡Abajo el imperialismo genocida, inmoral y fascista! Este acto de terrorismo de Estado que acaba de ocurrir en Venezuela es un atropello escandaloso a las normas del derecho internacional. La agresión militar a una nación de paz que en nada amenaza a Estados Unidos y el secuestro de un presidente legítimo electo soberanamente por su pueblo. No puede haber silencio ni aceptación de ese acto de terrorismo de Estado.
What's up, family? So we got to talk about what's happening after Trump decided to straight up snatch Nicolas Maduro, the socialist dictator of Venezuela, and haul him into the United States, because the fallout from this is wild. And if you don't really follow politics, I want to break it down simple, because Maduro isn't just some president who lost favor. He's the dude who stole elections, starved his people, cracked down on dissent, and basically ran the country like a mafia boss wearing a suit. And Trump basically said, nah, we're not doing that, or we're done with that, I should say, and had him taken. And instead of everybody cheering like, yeah, dictator finally got held accountable, you got leftists crying, protesting in the streets, acting like America kidnapped a saint, demanding freedom for a man who literally crushed democracy. He crushed it. And this right here exposes something big. A lot of these people don't actually care about freedom. They only care about when their side is in power. Because if the dictator is socialist, suddenly they're cool with it. Meanwhile, Venezuelans who've been suffering under that man, they're celebrating, they're relieved, they're genuinely hopeful for the first time in years. And that's the difference between people who talk about democracy and people who actually live through oppression and want real freedom. But here's the part that's got, the left-wing leaders shaking. Trump doing this means authoritarian presidents in Latin America now realize they might be next. And one of the loudest right now is Gustavo Petro from Colombia. And this dude is out here talking reckless. But before I go any further, don't take my word for it. I want you guys to check it out.
Venezuela is very sick. Colombia is very sick, too, run by a sick man who likes making cocaine and selling it to the United States. And he's not going to be doing it very long, let me tell you.
What does that mean? He's not going to be doing it very long.
He's not doing it very long. He has cocaine mills and cocaine factories. He's not going to be doing it very long.
So there will be an operation by the U.S.
It sounds good to me.
Secretary Rubio mentioned.
You know why? Because they kill a lot of people.
Y entonces le tengo que decir al señor Marco Rubio, hermano, si me va a meter preso, a ver si puede. Si me quiere poner la pijama naranja, inténtelo. Pero este pueblo no se le arrodilla. Sus odios del pasado, que no los conozco, ni ningún colombiano es culpable de lo que le pasó a su abuelo o a su papá.
Me amenace, aquí lo espero si quiere. No acepto invasiones, no acepto misiles, no acepto asesinatos, acepto inteligencia. Vengan aquí a hablar con inteligencia y lo recibimos y hablamos de tú a tú y con cifras reales, no con mentiras. Deje de engañarse de las mafias políticas colombianas, porque nos condenaron a 700,000 muertos, a ser el país más desigual del mundo.
So he's daring Trump, like he forgot the U.S. literally just proved they can pull up on whoever they want. And here's what makes it even crazier. Petro isn't even going to be president for long because his term is limited, meaning once he leaves office, he won't have the protection of power. And if the U.S. drops bounties on him for his alleged drug and cartel ties, there's no massive drama required. He becomes just another target of law enforcement instead of a political leader. And honestly, I don't know if this guy doesn't believe consequences are real or if he truly thinks he's untouchable, but reality is creeping up fast. Meanwhile, in Venezuela, the new acting leader, the vice president who stepped in after Maduro, tried to puff her chest up and sound tough in public, demanding Maduro be returned, acting like she run things. But don't take my word for it. Check it out.
We got the statement from Vice President Delcy Rodriguez of Venezuela, which I just played. So now we're awaiting Trump's response to that. What does this actually mean? You are there in Mar-a-Lago with the president. What's the response from him?
Yeah, and I don't think it will be a favorable response from the president. You know, he did sound fairly confident that Rodriguez would be going along with this plan. You know, after that press conference, he gave a phone call to the New York Post, and actually Rodriguez came up in that conversation. He was asked if U.S. troops would be on the ground in Venezuela running that country, and what he said was, quote, "No, if Maduro's vice president, if the vice president does what we want, we won't have to do that." And then he goes on to say, we're prepared. You know, we have a second wave that's much bigger than the first one. And so I do think, you know, now that Rodriguez is coming out and suggesting that she is not, in fact, on board with what the United States is doing down there, the president does seem to be setting up the prospect that the U.S. could go in with a second round of strikes. You know, he alluded to that in his press conference. He said that perhaps he didn't think it would be necessary, but saying pretty explicitly that he was ready to order that if the remnants of the Venezuelan regime didn't necessarily, you know, accede to the U.S. Running the country, which is what he said they would be doing. I think all of this just underscores how little we know about what exactly the U.S. role is going to be in Venezuela.
So basically, she stepped in, the vice president, after Maduro. She tried to puff her chest and sound tough in public, demanding Maduro be returned, acting like she run things, but behind closed doors, the word is she wasn't talking like that at all. Even Marco Rubio hinted that privately she sounded nervous and cooperative because deep down she knows what time it is. And CNN can spin it, pretend she's strong, call it propaganda. When your boss gets dragged out of power overnight by the biggest military in the world, suddenly talking about you want Maduro back and talking tough doesn't feel safe anymore. Honestly, I don't care what speeches she gives. I care about what moves she makes because the U.S. already showed these people they can be arrested, extradited, and tried if they don't cooperate. And this is Marco Rubio to my point, and him saying basically, sorry, Marco Rubio hinted privately that, look, she's cooperating, right? And I want you guys to check it out.
All of that happen. We insist on seeing that happen.
Did she
and
promise
we are
that?
going to work to continue to see that happen. Well, right now, we are going to see what happens moving forward. Let me just say that. I'm not obviously going to have these conversations in the media. These are delicate and complicated things that require mature statesmanship, and that's what we intend to do. But our goals remain the same. The difference is that the person who was in charge, even though not legitimately, in the past was someone you could not work with. We just could not work with him. He is not a person that had ever kept any of the deals he made, broke every deal he ever made a fool out of the Biden administration on the deal they made with him. And we offered him on multiple occasions an opportunity to remove himself from the scene in a positive way. He chose not to do so.
But his number two is now running the country. His number two is someone you can work with. And is that what you're implying here? And did she tell you that she will transition to democracy? And the woman who won the election along with her partner there, Maria Corina Machado.
We are going to make our assessments of people. You're asking me to make an assessment. We're going to make an assessment on the basis of what they do. Not what they say publicly in the interim, not what, what they've done in the past in many cases, but what they do moving forward. So we're going to find out. You're asking me, do I know what decisions people are going to make? I don't. I do know this, that if they don't make the right decisions, the United States will retain multiple levers of leverage to ensure that our interests are protected. Yeah. And that includes the oil quarantine that's in place, among other things. Well, but we are going to judge moving forward. We're going to judge everything by what they do.
And there you have it. And just imagine that mentally, right? Imagine mentally knowing the U.S. could have taken you in your sleep while your guards stand there useless, especially when some of these leaders already have drug trafficking warrants and bounties hovering over them. Of course, they're scared, and that changes how they behave real quick. So here's the thing people aren't wrapping their heads around. When you got warrants on you, bounties on your head in the biggest country in the world, just prove they can literally walk into your reality and remove you. That messes with you psychologically in a way most folks can't imagine, because it means nowhere feels safe anymore. Not your palace, not your bunker, not your motorcade. And the smart people in power see that and say, yeah, maybe we should just cooperate. While the dumb ones try to act tough for clout until reality slaps them. And it blows my mind that people like Sink Ugor, right? Check out this post on X. This guy, Sink Ugor, he still got this. He still don't get this dynamic. He's out here talking about America doesn't run Venezuela. We don't have authority of control. Like, bro, what do you think authority looks like? Right? So I want to read this post first before I continue to break it down even further. But it says, we are either running Venezuela or we're not. And obviously we are not. We are not on the ground. We have no authority. We have no ability to give orders on the ground. So Trump saying we're running Venezuela is dangerous bluster because it's a bluff waiting to get called. Right? So, like I was saying, he obviously doesn't get this dynamic. Authority isn't always soldiers marching through streets like a movie. Sometimes authority is just having so much leverage that when you make a phone call, the other side changes their behavior. And right now, Venezuela's new leadership is sounding real cooperative compared to how they were yelling 48 hours earlier. And Sink and people like him are still stuck analyzing the situation like it's the same as Iraq or Afghanistan. Like the only play America knows is full invasion. But this isn't that, right? Maybe for the far left, which we know that he's a pro-democrat individual, Sink Ugor. But when you look at it, this is targeted pressure, strategic moves, chess not checkers, where instead of blowing everything and rebuilding, you take out the top guys and make everybody else realize the consequences of pushing back. And suddenly they discover diplomacy. And that's why calling Trump's statement where he basically said we're running things and we're getting access to the oil, some dangerous bluff, totally misses the point. Because a bluff is only a bluff when you won't back it up, right? Trump already backed it up. The man literally had their president seized like an unpaid bill. Once you do that, every threat after that stops sounding like talk and starts sounding like policy. And the people in power over there know that. So when Sink says, if they call our bluff, then we either have to invade or back down, right? And it goes to his next post. And it says, and if they call that bluff, which for the moment being it appears they are, then we either have to go and take control on the ground, potential disaster in parentheses, or slink away after making such a audacious comment. It doesn't leave America in a good position either way, right? So, look, I already said about the bluff part, right? And when you really look at this thing, right? This is just ignorant. These posts are just ignorant and it's just dramatic in itself. And it shows you he doesn't really know what true leadership is. That's why I always say that the grown men are back in office. We got the grown folks back in office. And when you look at this thing, he's assuming Venezuela actually has the ability to stand firm. And they don't. They're broke, unpopular, surrounded by enemies internally and externally. And they already saw how fast leadership can vanish overnight. And here's where common sense comes in, because if you're the Venezuela government right now, you look around and you realize your economy collapsed, your people hate you, your military is shaky, your elites are terrified. And now in America just made an example out of your leadership or your leader. So what's the smarter play? Pretend you're strong and risk getting dragged out too, or play along, cooperate, and hope to make it out without handcuffs? Obviously, you play along, right? Because that's why when Trump said she changed her tone and the VP publicly came out days later and said she's open to collaboration, that wasn't an accident. That was survival mode because, like I said, nobody wants to go to bed wondering if Delta Force is going to kick their door in at 3 in the morning. And that's the reality these left-wing commentators ignore while they push fear-mongering scenarios and doom takes, talking like there's no good outcome and it's all good to end disaster. Or good, it's all going to end in disaster, I meant to say. You know what I'm saying? So they refuse to acknowledge the simple reality. People behave differently once they realize consequences are real, right? So all these doom takes and talking like there's no good outcome and it's all going to be a disaster and everything's going to be, look, man. And as wild as it sounds, Trump being blunt is part of why this works. He's not hiding behind shiny words like humanitarian intervention or promoting Western values. He's straight up like, yeah, it's about strategy. It's about power. It's about oil. It's about national interests. And instead of pretending America is some selfless superhero country, he's basically saying, nah, this is business. And we're handling business. And history shows that what most nations do anyway, they just lie about it. And Trump's not lying. And once other countries realize he's willing to act on that mindset, everything changes. Threats aren't theory anymore. They're precedent, which is why the argument that America isn't really in control just sounds naive. Control doesn't always mean occupying. Sometimes it means having the ability to force decisions without ever stepping foot in the building. And that's exactly what's happening. The Venezuelan president saw what happened to Maduro and immediately decided cooperation sounds nice. That's not coincidence. That's leverage. Okay? And I want you guys to see this to get an even more understanding from Fox News and what was said. Check it out. Okay?
As Secretary Rubio stated just yesterday, this is the Western Hemisphere. This is where we live. And we're not going to allow the Western Hemisphere to be used as a base of operation for our nation's adversaries and competitors and rivals of the United States. You can't turn Venezuela into the operating hub for Iran, for Hezbollah, for gangs, for Cuban intelligence agents, and other malign actors that control that country. You cannot continue to have the largest energy reserves in the world under the control of adversaries of the United States, under the control of illegitimate leaders, and not benefiting the people of Venezuela, and stolen by a handful of oligarchs inside of Venezuela. But it doesn't stop there. Numerous UN and international human rights organizations have issued reports
You guys get the point from Fox when you just seen the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Michael Waltz, right? And when you look at it, because it says on the headline, Maduro is responsible for destabilizing Western Hemisphere. And that goes to my point. And this is why comparing Venezuela to the Middle East misses the whole point. The dynamics are totally different. Venezuela doesn't have a population itching to resist America. They already been protesting their own government for years. They don't have the same tribal warfare or religious divisions, and they don't have resources to fight anyone. And they're exhausted, broken, desperate. So when America steps in and say, we'll work with you if you behave, but if you don't, we'll deal with you. Well, most leaders choose behaving. And does that mean there won't be tension? Nah. Does it guarantee no problems? Absolutely not. But it's not Iraq 2.0. It's more like telling a corrupt boss, you can either step aside quietly and keep your pension, or we're taking everything. One path is chaos, the other is cooperation. And they already see which way the wind is blowing. And if this strategy actually plays out how it looks, it might, where Venezuelan stabilizes, transitions leadership, works with the U.S. and avoids a full-blown collapse. That's going to go down as the one of the most biggest foreign policy wins in modern history. Like legitimately, no endless war, no $1 trillion rebuild, just targeted pressure and results. And that boosts Marco Rubio's legacy massively, making him look like a genius strategist instead of just another politician. And it cements Trump as someone who didn't just talk tough internationally, he acted and got outcomes. And that's why people are nervous, because it proves that if you push the US too far, they won't give speeches. They'll make phone calls and you'll disappear. And the rest of Latin America is watching like, yeah, maybe let's not test that. So yeah, the left can scream, protest, panic, but at the end of the day, Venezuela government has already started bending. And the region is on edge. And Trump just reminded the world what America decides to move, it moves. I mean, when America decides to move, it moves. And honestly, it's wild to watch, but it's also kind of comforting if you're American like myself, knowing the country still has that level of reach. Because what this whole thing really shows is simple. You either cooperate or you find out, right? So now I want to go to this clip, right? In regards to the matter when it comes to Venezuela and what's being reported even more. To go a little bit deeper, check it out.
Interim leader is calling for collaboration with Washington as she holds her first cabinet meeting after being ordered by the High Court to assume the role. And this after the abduction of Nicolas Maduro by the United States. Donald Trump had warned Delcy Rodriguez that she would have to do exactly what the US wanted, and has repeated that the US will run Venezuela in the short term, something that his Secretary of State has stepped back from slightly, focusing more on Venezuela's oil reserves. Well, let's cross now live to Fraser Jackson in Washington. Fraser, for Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez holding the first cabinet meeting. Trump had given her quite stark warnings. To what extent do you think the US is going to try to run Venezuela, put pressure on the leaders there, or how much is it all about simple access to oil?
Yeah, well, there's a bit of a split narrative coming out of DC now. Donald Trump, of course, said that he was going to run Venezuela, but Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, spent the best part of Sunday trying to kind of tone down that narrative, trying to strike a somewhat more diplomatic tone, but Donald Trump continuing that narrative that the US is in control of Venezuela. But in reality, what he means is that the US is trying to influence the interim President Rodriguez to align with US interests and demands. Now, at first, Rodriguez was, of course, hostile in her tone to the US, calling the US operation a barbarity, accusing the US of an oil grab. But then Donald Trump publicly threatened her on Sunday morning, telling The Atlantic that if she doesn't do what's right, she's going to pay a very big price, bigger than what Maduro paid. So then on Sunday night, we get the statement from Rodriguez, which effectively softens the tone from the interim president of Venezuela. In her statement, she said, "We extended invitation to the US government to work together on a cooperative agenda oriented towards shared development within the framework of international law and to strengthen lasting community coexistence." So that means that she could well then give Donald Trump what he wants, which is access for US companies to the Venezuelan oil industry, but also other industries, which we heard on the plane back from Mar-a-Lago back to DC. Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce, said that they're also looking into the steel and aluminium industries as well as critical minerals as well. So Donald Trump trying to extend US interests in Venezuela, and it's believed, mainly because he said it came from Donald Trump's mouth itself, that after that is when we will get new elections being pushed for in Venezuela. So new elections not until after the oil industry has been sorted out. But of course, that in itself is a difficult task. But it looks like we still don't know. So it could be some while off yet.
Meanwhile...
So boom, what we see, right, is how fast the current Venezuela government switched up. Like I'm saying, this whole video. And get this video a big thumbs up if you got this far. And you can't do this to basically, okay, let's work together. That's the energy they switched up to. And it just proves the point. People don't respond to empty threats. They respond to results. And Trump actually did it. He didn't tweet about it. He didn't warn. He didn't threaten on TV. He took action. And now every threat that comes after that hits different. And now when he says you're next, that's not a figure of speech. That's a preview. And that's why the old school media commentators, the ones stuck in this soft diplomatic framework, don't get it. They think it's still 2005. They're still talking like we got to earn the world's approval or build coalitions or wait for international consensus. Bro, we don't need none of that. We are the consensus, right? We are the consensus. And when you act with boldness, with clarity, and with proof of power, everybody else either moves aside or moves in line. And that's the shift we're watching in real time. And again, I don't know. I know it makes people uncomfortable. And it's not nice. It's not clean, but it's the truth. Because at the end of the day, you either run your business or somebody runs it for you. You either make the rules or live under the ones made by someone else. In Venezuela, they made their choice by letting Maduro run wild. Maduro ran wild and ran that country into a hellhole. Now they're seeing what happens when that choice catches up to you. And if they're smart, they'll ride this moment out, play it smart, and let the U.S. help stabilize the place. Because the other option is that's a short trip to a U.S. prison car or worse. And that's why this woman, the VP, who took Maduro's spot, she ain't trying to get snatched up, man. She ain't trying to get snatched up. She saw what happened. She don't want that midnight tap on the window. She don't want that chopper hovering over her villa. She don't want the Delta Force slipping in while her guards are busy watching soccer. You know what I mean? She's seen what time it is, and that's why she's suddenly on the phone with the Trump administration like, let's figure something out. Like, bro, she went from dictator energy to customer service voice real quick, and let's not act brand new. We've seen this movie before. Anytime someone talks big and then gets real consequences, phone call, all of a sudden it's let's collaborate, right? And that's exactly what's happening here. And it's the classic fight or flight situation. And when the U.S. shows you we can walk in and take your leader without blinking, most folks choose flight. Now, meanwhile, you got the usual talking heads out here saying this could backfire and this could create instability. Okay, sure, it could, but instability was already there. Venezuela has been falling apart, right, for years. So when you look at all of this thing and you look at what this is, just bigger than speeches. It's bigger than peace deals that fall apart, bigger than sanctions. This is direct, action-driven diplomacy. No guessing games, no mixed signals. Just do what's right or we'll come back. And if it works, it's phenomenal, right? Executing policy on that tip, backing with force, clarity, and a real world understanding, right? And this would be the most impactful foreign policy president in recent memory when it comes to Trump. Not because he made the world love us, but because he made the world respect us again. And that's more important. Respect comes before peace. Respect is the price of the conversation. And when people fear what you might do, they move carefully. That's the difference. So yeah, let the media panic. Let the left cry about international law and interventionism. Meanwhile, regular folks watching this, they see what just happened. Trump made a move and it worked. Venezuela's talking different. Pedro's shaking, and the region's watching. And America just proved it still got the juice, right? So it's just a matter of whether Venezuela keeps cooperating or if they get bold and test the patience again.
Fraser, Maduro and his wife expected in court in the United States this Monday.
Yeah, they'll be heading to the Southern District of New York in Manhattan, where they will be arraigned with those charges read out for them. They then will have an opportunity to hear what the case against them is. It's expected that they are going to plead not guilty to all of the charges of the narco terrorism charges, as well as cocaine conspiracy and weapons charges as well. But until the trial goes ahead, which could be quite some time from now, months, if not even into next year, then the Maduros are likely to be held in that detention facility in Brooklyn without bail. That is, of course, a very high-profile prison where high-profile prisoners like Luigi Mangione, P. Diddy are inside that facility as well. But bail unlikely in this case, considering the high-profile nature of the case. But like I said, that could take some time to come to trial. And it's looking like it could be a long stint in prison for Maduro, because if he is found guilty of these charges, the mandatory minimums for these charges are 30 years. So for a man in his 60s, that would mean he'd be well into his 90s if indeed he did get found guilty on these charges. So it looks like Maduro could well find himself behind bars in the United States for the rest of his life.
And Fraser, you mentioned there Trump was indeed speaking to reporters on Air Force One. He also made noises about Colombia.
No, there you have it, folks. When you really look at this thing, it just showed that the U.S. can flex power without war, without warning, and scare the hell out of anyone pretending to be safe. And the people who got the most exposed, the fake pro-democracy left, the socialist leaders watching Latin America, and the media stuck in 2003 or whatever. This is what the whole dominate thing is, right? You either dominate or get dominated, right? That has shown in time and time again throughout the period of history. And at the end of the day, we all know that there's China, Russia. Well, we got China. You know, other countries compete with us. And at the end of the day, we don't want to be dominated, so we have to dominate and also be fair and be very objective and still understand that people could still be put in their place, but we all be fair and peaceful and working on the best interests of each other. Also on top of national security for the best of us, and they can still have their country and play ball, right? Because at the end of the day, everybody should be able to have their constituents working together. Everybody should be able to have their leaders working together, trading resources to build each other economies up, and their constituents can stay in their countries while everybody is safe and people are not running rancid, seeking asylum to other countries, overflowing America and exhausting our resources. They can actually go back home and we build each other up and everybody's fair. And it's a give and a take, right? You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I hope you guys understood where I was coming from with this whole thing. Catch you in the next one. Peace.